My husband tried to exclude me from his brother's wedding, but the venue belonged to me. You know that moment when your world tilts sideways and nothing makes sense anymore? Well, mine happened on a Tuesday morning while I was folding laundry in our Denver home. My husband David was in the shower, and his phone kept buzzing on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't even glance at it, but the notification preview caught my eye: wedding seating chart final. My blood ran cold. David's younger brother Jake was getting married to his fiancée Amanda in 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard a single word about seating arrangements. In fact, the last I'd heard, they were still finalizing details. I picked up the phone, and what I saw made my hands shake. There it was, clear as day, a detailed seating chart for Jake and Amanda's wedding at Riverside Manor. Every table was mapped out with names I recognized: David's parents, his cousins, family friends, college buddies. I scrolled through every single table, looking for my name. Table 1, the immediate family table, David was there. Table 2, extended family, nothing. Table 3, close friends, nope. I went through all 12 tables twice, my heart pounding harder each time. Elizabeth Morrison, that's me, was nowhere to be found. I sat there staring at that phone screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. We'd been married for 4 years. I'd been to every family gathering, every birthday party, every holiday celebration. I'd helped Jake move apartments, listened to Amanda complain about her job for hours, even helped them pick out engagement rings. And yet, somehow, I wasn't invited to their wedding. The shower was still running, steam creeping under the bathroom door. I quickly put the phone back exactly where I'd found it, my mind racing. Maybe it was a mistake? Maybe there was another list? But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't an oversight, this was intentional. When David emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, humming some random tune, I studied his face. He looked normal, relaxed, even. Like a man who wasn't keeping a massive secret from his wife. "Morning, babe," he said, kissing my cheek. "What's the plan for today?" I forced a smile, but inside, I was already planning my next move. I spent the next 3 days pretending everything was normal while conducting my own private investigation. It wasn't hard. David had always been terrible at covering his tracks. His laptop was full of wedding-related emails, and his browser history told the whole story. The plan had been in motion for months. There were email chains between David, Jake, Amanda, and his mother Patricia discussing the delicate situation of my attendance. Apparently, Amanda's family was traditional, and didn't approve of me because I was David's second wife. Never mind that his first marriage had ended 5 years before we even met. Never mind that we'd had a beautiful wedding that half these people attended. The most damning email was from Patricia to David: "Honey, you know how Amanda's parents feel about divorce. Maybe it's better if Elizabeth sits this one out. It's just 1 day, and it would make everything so much smoother. Jake really wants their blessing." David's response made my stomach turn: "You're probably right, Mom. I'll figure out something to tell her." I closed the laptop and sat in our home office, staring out at the garden I'd spent 2 years cultivating. The roses were blooming beautifully, the same roses I'd planned to cut for Amanda's bridal shower centerpieces next week. The irony wasn't lost on me. But here's the thing they didn't know, the thing that was about to turn their perfect plan upside down. Riverside Manor wasn't just some random venue they'd booked. It was mine. Well, technically it belonged to my family's event management company, Morrison Events, which I'd inherited from my grandmother 3 years ago. The sprawling estate in the Colorado foothills had been hosting weddings for over 30 years. Jake and Amanda had booked it through our general manager, never connecting the dots between the venue owner and David's wife. David knew I owned the property, but in all the wedding chaos, he'd apparently forgotten this tiny detail. I pulled out my business laptop and opened our booking system. There it was: Jake Morrison and Amanda Clark, wedding reception, June 15th, Riverside Manor. Paid in full, contract signed, completely legitimate booking. I leaned back in my chair and couldn't help but laugh. They wanted to exclude me from the wedding? Fine. But they'd have to find somewhere else to hold it. The next morning, I drove up to Riverside Manor under the pretense of checking on some maintenance issues. The property was stunning as always, a classic stone mansion surrounded by manicured gardens, with a perfect view of the Rocky Mountains in the distance. The event space could hold 200 guests easily, with a grand ballroom, outdoor terraces, and a bridal suite that had been featured in Colorado Weddings magazine. I walked through the gardens where Jake and Amanda planned to have their ceremony, imagining the white chairs arranged in perfect rows, the altar decorated with peonies and baby's breath. It would have been beautiful. Would have been. My general manager, Robert, met me at the main entrance. He was a kind man in his 60s who'd been running day-to-day operations since my grandmother's time. Elizabeth. Good to see you. Everything okay? Actually, Robert, I need to discuss the Morrison wedding scheduled for next Saturday. His face lit up. Oh yes, lovely couple. The bride was just here yesterday for the final walkthrough. Very excited. It's going to be a beautiful event. I took a deep breath. I'm going to need to cancel that booking. Robert's expression shifted to confusion, then concern. Cancel? Elizabeth, that's less than 2 weeks away. We never cancel bookings this close to the event unless there's an emergency. The contract clearly states. I know what the contract states. I wrote it. I pulled out the paperwork. Check section 12, subsection C. Robert adjusted his glasses and read aloud, Morrison Events reserves the right to cancel any booking if the client engages in behavior deemed discriminatory or harmful to the venue owner or staff. He looked up at me, puzzled. Elizabeth, what's going on? I explained the situation as calmly as I could. How I discovered I was intentionally excluded from my brother-in-law's wedding, despite being family. How they'd made this decision months ago and planned to lie to me about it. How they were using my own venue to celebrate while deliberately humiliating me. Robert listened quietly, his face growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. That's just wrong, Elizabeth. I'm so sorry. He looked down at the contract again. You're well within your rights to cancel. The discrimination clause has never been used, but this certainly qualifies. I want you to call them today. Robert made the call that afternoon while I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see him through the window, gesturing as he spoke, his expression serious and professional. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Jake. Elizabeth? What the hell is going on? Some guy from Riverside Manor just called and cancelled our wedding venue. He said something about discrimination and breach of contract. This has to be a mistake. I let him talk, his voice getting higher and more panicked with each word. Amanda was crying in the background, and I could hear her mother's shrill voice demanding answers. It's not a mistake, Jake. What do you mean? Elizabeth, our wedding is in 8 days. 8 days. We've got 180 people coming. The food is ordered, the flowers are arranged, Amanda's dress is being altered tomorrow. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't family enough to attend. Silence. Long, heavy silence. You know about that? I know everything, Jake. I know about the emails, the family meetings, the delicate situation of my attendance. I know your fiancé's family thinks I'm some kind of scarlet woman because I'm David's second wife. I know you all plan to lie to me about why I couldn't come. Elizabeth, please let me explain. Explain what? That you're willing to use my family's venue for your wedding but not willing to have me at your wedding? That my husband went along with this? That your mother thinks I'm not good enough to sit at the same table as your precious in-laws? Amanda's voice came through the phone, tearful and desperate. Elizabeth, please, I'm begging you. We can fix this. You can come to the wedding. We'll add you to the seating chart right now. I almost laughed. Add me to my brother-in-law's wedding? How generous of you. We made a mistake, Jake said. A terrible mistake. But please don't punish Amanda for this. She doesn't deserve to have her wedding ruined. You're right, I said quietly. She doesn't deserve this. But neither did I. I hung up and sat in my car as the sun set behind the mountains, watching the golden light fade from the manor windows. My phone started ringing immediately. Jake, Amanda, Patricia, even David. I turned it off and drove home. David was waiting in our driveway when I got home, pacing like a caged animal. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and he had that look he got when one of his construction projects was falling apart. Elizabeth. Thank God. We need to talk. I walked past him into the house, not saying a word. He followed me into the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of wine and leaned against the counter, waiting. "This is insane," he started, running his hands through his hair. "You can't cancel their wedding venue a week before the wedding. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I have a pretty good idea, yes. My mother is hysterical. Amanda's parents are threatening to sue. Jake is driving around to every venue within 50 miles trying to find somewhere that can accommodate 180 people next Saturday. Most places are booked solid." I took a sip of my wine. "Sounds stressful." "Elizabeth, please. I know we screwed up. I know I screwed up. But this is nuclear. This is going to destroy our family." "Our family." I set down my wine glass. "David, I wasn't considered part of your family 3 days ago." "What changed?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "That was wrong. I was wrong. I should have stood up for you from the beginning." "Why didn't you?" "Because..." He slumped into one of our kitchen chairs. "Because it seemed easier to go along with it. Amanda's parents are old-fashioned and judgmental, and her dad is helping Jake start his consulting business. Jake was terrified of rocking the boat. Mom thought it would just be simpler if we said you had food poisoning or something." Food poisoning. It was stupid. I know how stupid it was. But I thought, what's one day? We could take a vacation the following weekend, just the two of us. "Make it up to you." I stared at my husband, this man I'd shared a bed with for 4 years, who'd promised to love and honor me, who apparently thought I was so insignificant that my absence from major family events could be covered up with fictional stomach bugs. "David, do you remember what you said in your wedding vows?" He looked confused by the question. "Of course. You said you'd stand by me no matter what. You said I'd never have to face anything alone as long as we were married. You said choosing me meant choosing me every single day, in front of everyone." His face crumpled. "Elizabeth. But at the first sign of family pressure, you threw me under the bus. And the worst part? You were going to lie to me about it." The next morning brought a parade of visitors to our front door. First Patricia, David's mother, arrived at 7 a.m. with tears in her eyes and a Tupperware container of homemade blueberry muffins, her go-to peace offering. "Elizabeth, honey, please. We need to talk about this reasonably." I invited her in, mostly because I was curious to hear how she planned to spin this. "I know you're hurt," she began, settling into our living room with her perfectly styled gray hair and her concerned mother expression. "And you have every right to be. But you have to understand Amanda's family. They're very traditional. Very religious. Her father made some comments about divorce and second marriages that made Jake panic. So instead of defending your daughter-in-law, you decided to hide her?" "It wasn't like that. We thought, we hoped, maybe after the wedding, once they got to know you better, things would be different." "Patricia, I've known Amanda for 3 years. I helped plan their engagement party. I've been to every family dinner, every holiday celebration. How much better do they need to know me?" She twisted her wedding ring, a habit I'd noticed whenever she was uncomfortable. "Elizabeth, please." Jake is beside himself. Amanda hasn't stopped crying. They've called 17 venues, and the only available spaces are a VFW hole in Aurora and someone's backyard. 2 hours later, Jake and Amanda showed up together. Amanda's eyes were red and puffy, and Jake looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. "We're willing to do anything," Amanda said before I could even offer them coffee. "Anything at all. We'll pay you double the rental fee. Triple. We'll make a public apology. We'll uninvite my parents if that's what it takes." "You'd uninvite your parents from your wedding?" Amanda and Jake exchanged glances. "If that's what you want," Jake said quietly. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "This isn't about your parents, Jake. This is about respect. This is about family. This is about the fact that you all sat around a table planning my humiliation and thought that was acceptable." "We never wanted to humiliate you," Amanda whispered. "Then what did you want?" "We wanted..." She struggled for words. "We wanted everyone to be happy. We wanted a perfect day without any drama or tension." "And you thought the best way to avoid drama was to secretly exclude me?" "Yes," she admitted. "And that was wrong. Completely wrong." At least she was honest. By Thursday, David had moved into the guest room, and I'd had 3 days to think about what I really wanted out of this mess. The answer surprised me. I wanted my marriage to survive this, but only if David could prove he understood how badly he'd failed me. I wanted Jake and Amanda to learn that actions have consequences, but I didn't want to be the villain in their love story for the rest of their lives. And I wanted Amanda's judgmental parents to see that their prejudices had real costs. That afternoon, I called a family meeting at Riverside Manor. Everyone came: David, Jake, Amanda, Patricia, even Amanda's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson from Kansas, who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else on earth. We sat in the Manor's elegant conference room, late afternoon sunlight streaming through the tall windows. I let them all squirm for a few minutes before I spoke. "I'm going to tell you what's going to happen," I began, looking each of them in the eye. "Jake and Amanda, you can have your wedding here on Saturday as planned." Amanda burst into tears of relief. Jake grabbed her hand. "But," I continued, "there are conditions." I pulled out a sheet of paper I'd spent hours preparing. "First, I will be seated at the immediate family table, next to my husband, where I belong. Second, David will give a speech during the reception acknowledging his mistake and publicly apologizing for it. Third, the program will list Morrison Events as the venue sponsor, with a note that the bride and groom are grateful to the venue owner for her generosity in hosting their celebration." Amanda's father started to object, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished." Fourth, Amanda's parents will contribute an additional $5,000 to the final bill as a gesture of appreciation for the last-minute accommodation. And fifth, if anyone at all, makes a comment about my presence, my marriage, my history, or anything else designed to make me uncomfortable, security will escort them out immediately. The room was dead silent. "Those are my terms," I said, standing up. "You have until tomorrow at noon to decide." David caught up with me in the parking lot. "Elizabeth, wait." I turned around. He looked broken, truly broken, in a way I'd never seen before. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said. "I don't deserve you giving them another chance. I sure as hell don't deserve you still trying to save our marriage after what I did." "No, you don't. But I'm grateful. And I promise you, I will never, ever let anything like this happen again. I will stand up for you, for us, every single time, no matter who's watching." I studied his face, looking for any sign that these were just words. But what I saw was genuine remorse and something that looked like fear that he'd lost me for good. "We'll see," I said finally. "We'll see." The wedding was beautiful. Amanda looked radiant in her grandmother's lace gown, Jake couldn't stop smiling, and the gardens were perfect in the golden June sunlight. I wore my favorite navy dress and sat at table 1, right where I belonged, with David's hand firmly holding mine. During his speech, David's voice cracked as he apologized publicly for his failure to honor his wife the way she deserved. Several people wiped their eyes, and I saw Amanda's mother lean over to whisper something to her husband that made him nod seriously. Later, Amanda pulled me aside during the dancing. "Thank you," she said simply. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are." "How did you know we'd agree to your terms?" I smiled, watching Jake spin his new wife around the dance floor. "Because love makes people do crazy things. Even the right thing sometimes." David and I renewed our vows 6 months later in a small ceremony at Riverside Manor, with Jake and Amanda as our witnesses. This time, there was no question about the guest list. This time, everyone who mattered was exactly where they belonged.